In a world divided by politics, religion, race, and nationality, could a philosophy from ancient Greece offer a better way? We've never been more connected and at the same time never seemed more divided. The Stoics saw this problem coming 2,000 years ago and created a solution. They called it Cosmopolitanism. Sometime in the 4th century BC, the philosopher Diogenes was asked where he came from. Now, this wasn't just small talk. In the ancient Greek world, your city was your identity. To be Athenian or Spartan or Corinthian wasn't just a geographical fact. It determined your legal status, your social obligations, your religious community, your rights, and your entire sense of who you were. The city was basically the boundary of everything that mattered. But Diogenes gave an answer to that question that no one in the history of Western thought had ever given before when he said, "I am a citizen of the world." Diogenes, the first recorded cosmopolitan. The Greek word cosmopolites combines cosmos, meaning the universe, the ordered whole, and polites, meaning citizen. So not a citizen of Athens or Sparta or any city-state, but a citizen of the entire rational community of human beings. In context, this would have sounded to most people like deliberate provocation or madness, and with Diogenes it was probably a bit of both. The Cynics, of which he was one, did partly mean it as a challenge to social conventions they thought were hollow and fake, but the Stoics, who inherited this idea from the Cynics and gave it real philosophical depth and practical meaning, meant it completely seriously. They built a full account of why every human being, regardless of where they were born, what they looked like, or where they sat in society, belongs to a single moral community. That account has been shaping the way the Western world thinks about ethics, law, and human rights ever since. Today we're going to get into what it actually means, why it follows naturally from Stoic philosophy, and why I think it might be the most urgently needed idea the ancient world has to offer that could benefit us all right now, today. Welcome back to the Stoic Mind Mechanic. My name's Tim Howell. Last time we explored living according to nature and established that human nature in the Stoic view is both rational and social. Today we follow the social dimension all the way to its fullest expression. If every human being genuinely shares in a common rational nature, what does that mean for the boundaries of our moral community? Who counts as one of us? The Stoic answer is easy to say, but difficult to actually live. Everyone. Every rational being, no exceptions, no hierarchy, no differentiation based on citizenship, culture, or how close they live to you. Let's look at the philosophical argument that gets us there and at what it asks of you if you take it seriously. The Stoic case for cosmopolitanism isn't built on sentiment. It doesn't rest on a warm, fuzzy feeling that we're all basically the same, or the optimistic hope that our differences would melt away if we just spent more time together. It rests on a philosophical argument that builds on things we've already covered in this series. The first building block is the logos, the rational principle that organizes the universe. We explored this back in episode 10. The cosmos isn't random. It has a deep rational structure, and everything that exists is, in some sense, an expression of that structure. The second building block is that human beings are uniquely capable of consciously participating in the logos. We have reason, we can perceive the rational order of things, reflect upon it, and bring our lives into alignment with it. No other creature on earth does this. It's the defining feature of human nature. The third building block, which follows directly from the first two, is that because of this shared rational capacity, all human beings share something more fundamental than anything else that divides them. They share in the same logos, They are, as the Stoics put it, fragments of the same fire. And the conclusion the Stoics drew from all of this is one of the most striking in the history of ethics. If reason is what makes a human being fully human, and if reason is common to all, then all human beings are members of a single community with equal standing and equal claim on each other's moral consideration. The boundaries of the moral community are the boundaries of the rational species, no less. No less. Not the boundaries of your tribe, not the boundaries of your nation, and not the people who share your culture, your language, your religion, or your background. The boundaries of one rational species. Marcus Aurelius, governing an empire that stretched across dozens of nationalities, languages, and cultures, wrote in the Meditations, "My city and my country, as Antonius, is Rome. As a human being, it is the world." Two communities at the same time, the particular one he was born into with its own obligations, and the universal one he belonged to by virtue of being human. Marcus didn't see these as contradictions. He saw them as nested, the smaller inside the larger, the particular inside the universal, each with its own genuine claims. A Stoic philosopher called Hierocles, writing in the 2nd century AD, gave us what's still the most useful image of how cosmopolitan obligations actually work in practice. It's known as the concentric circles model, and it's worth looking at because it directly addresses the most obvious pushback people have against cosmopolitanism. Hierocles asked, how do we actually extend our moral concern outward from ourselves to all of humanity? Not in one impossible leap, but in a series of ever-widening circles, each one containing the previous one. And the very centre circle is yourself, your own reason, your own character, your own well-being. Now this is where the moral life has to start, because you can't have genuine obligations to others without first having them to yourself. In the next circle out would be your immediate family, parents, children, siblings, the people whose lives are most closely woven into yours. And the next circle is extended family, close friends, people you actually know. Then following on with subsequent rings for your neighbours and local community, then broader society and your country, and then finally, encompassing all the others, is a ring for all rational beings, all of humanity. Now, Hierocles wasn't saying you should feel the same intensity of obligation toward a stranger in a distant country as you do toward your own child. That would be psychologically incoherent. His point was more subtle and more demanding when he said, "It is the task of a person of good character to draw the outer circles progressively inward, to treat those in the farther circles more like those in the nearer ones, and ultimately to regard all rational beings as, in some meaningful sense, members of one's own community." Drawing the outer circles inward. Don't abolish the distinctions. The circles are real, the particular obligations are real, but continuously extend the quality of your concern outward, not treating everyone identically, but progressively expanding your genuine care beyond the people immediately in front of you. Now, the thing about Stoic cosmopolitanism is that I find most powerful isn't really the philosophical argument, striking as it is. It's who expressed it most clearly. There were two people, a slave and an emperor. Epictetus, who as a slave had been classified under Roman law as property rather than a person, wrote and taught a philosophy of universal rational community. The man who'd experienced what it means to be formally excluded from the circle of recognized persons built an ethics in which that exclusion was philosophically impossible. Every rational being, including the slave, including the foreigner, they all shared in the Logos, and no human authority could take that away. In the Discourses, Epictetus puts it simply, God made all human beings for happiness, all for steadiness of mind. He gave some things to all, these he gave from himself, the rest he left to each of us, and one of the things he gave to all is the capacity to reason rightly. Meanwhile, Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire in which millions of those same human beings lived as enslaved persons, wrote this to himself: "We are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. To act against one another is contrary to nature, and all anger and rejection is acting against one another." Made for cooperation, a biological metaphor for the cosmopolitan claim. Hands don't compete with feet, and eyes don't go to war with ears. The parts of a body cooperate because they belong to the same organism. The Stoics believed rational beings are members of a single organism, the rational community of humanity, and that acting against each other is as unnatural as a hand attacking a foot. A slave who worked this out, an emperor who wrote it down, coming to exactly the same conclusion from completely opposite ends of the social world. That convergence, for me, is one of the most compelling arguments that this idea is genuinely universal, not just a comfortable philosophy for people who already have plenty. There is a serious objection to all of this, and I want to address it honestly because it comes from a genuinely good place. The objection normally goes something like this: I obviously have more obligation to my own children than to a child I've never met. I have more obligation to my own community than to one on the other side of the world. Those particular obligations are real and morally serious. If your philosophy is now asking me to set those aside in the name of some abstract universal community, you're asking me to be a worse parent and a worse neighbour in order to be a better cosmopolitan. That can't be right. The Stoics do agree on this. The particular obligations are real. The whole point of the concentric circles model is to acknowledge exactly that. Proximity, relationship, and specific knowledge create genuine and different moral claims. What the Stoics do push back on is the next move, the one most people make without even noticing, that the assumption that because our particular obligations are stronger within our sphere, the outer circles carry no moral weight at all, that a stranger's suffering is simply not our concern, that communities we don't belong to have no claim on us whatsoever, that the moral universe extends exactly as far as our own tribe and stops there. The Stoic position on this is: the inner circles are stronger, but the outer circles are still real. Both things are true at the same time. You can be a fully committed parent, a genuinely loyal citizen, and a person who holds the suffering of distant strangers as morally relevant, not because you feel it with the same intensity, but because your understanding of what those people are won't let you write them off as being outside your moral community. I want to be frank about why this feels particularly urgent right now, while still being honest about the real tensions that are involved. We're living through a period of intense political tribalism. The language of politics in almost every country I can think of has shifted towards in-group loyalty, prioritizing the immediate community over the wider one, and at its worst, treating people outside the favoured group as something less than human. And this isn't exclusively a right-wing thing or a left-wing thing or a Western thing. It's a human thing, activated by uncertainty, competition, and the feeling of being under threat, which pretty accurately describes where a lot of people are right now. Stoic cosmopolitanism doesn't advocate for open borders, no nations, and ignore your immediate community. It says something more philosophically foundational and more personally demanding. Before you decide where the lines of moral community should be drawn politically, look honestly at the assumption you're bringing to that question. Ask yourself, on what grounds do you decide that the person on one side of a line counts and the person on the other doesn't? If the answer is rational nature, then the line has to include everyone. If the answer is culture, language, ethnicity, or citizenship, then you have to explain why those things, rather than the capacity for reason and moral agency, are what actually matters about a person. And that explanation has never convincingly been given. The Stoic position doesn't revolve around questions about immigration policy, international law, or the distribution of global resources. Those are genuinely hard, contested, complex questions where reasonable people disagree. What it does is insist on a prior philosophical commitment that the people on the other side of every debate are rational beings whose suffering genuinely counts, whose interests matter, whose membership in the human moral community is not conditional on their usefulness to you. Marcus Aurelius, holding the power of life and death over millions of people he had never met, held this as a daily practice, not a sentiment, not a policy position, a practice. The daily reminder that the human being in front of him, whatever their origin, shared in the same rational nature that he was trying to express in himself. He says, begin the morning by saying to yourself, today I will meet with people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are this way because they cannot tell good from evil, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. We were born to work together. Related to my own. That's the cosmopolitan practice in its most intimate and most daily form. Not a grand political gesture, just a quality of attention brought to the person who is hardest to extend it to. I want to close with something that I think is one of the most quietly radical lines in all of ancient philosophy. It's from the Roman playwright Terence. He wasn't a Stoic philosopher himself, but someone who moved in the same intellectual circles, absorbing Stoic ideas through that extraordinary community. The line appears in one of his plays, The Self-Tormentor, spoken by a character explaining his interest in the troubles of others. I am a human being. I consider nothing human to be alien to me. Nothing human is alien to me. Not distant suffering, not unfamiliar customs, not the life that looks nothing like mine, not the person whose circumstances, choices, and political views I find completely incomprehensible. None of it is alien. All of it is, in the deepest sense, mine, because we share in the same rational nature, the same capacity for suffering and for flourishing, and the same membership in what the Stoics called the world city. Now that claim isn't naive. It doesn't dissolve the real differences between people. It doesn't pretend that shared rational nature automatically produces shared values, or that fellow feeling is a substitute for genuinely grappling with the hard questions of justice and community. It's prior to all of that. It's the philosophical commitment that before you engage with those questions, you've already decided that the person on the other side is a member of your moral community, someone whose suffering counts, whose reasons deserve to be heard, whose nature is related to your own. So your practice from this episode today, choose one person, a specific real person, who you find it hardest to extend genuine moral concern to. Not sympathy, not agreement necessarily, not pretending the difficulty isn't real. Just the honest recognition that this person is a rational being whose nature is related to yours. Now hold that recognition for 60 seconds and notice what it asks of you. In our next episode, we get into the Stoic theory of emotion, one of the most sophisticated and most misunderstood parts of the entire tradition, and the one with the most direct connections to modern psychology. We'll look at what the Stoics actually said about feelings, why they're absolutely not telling you to suppress them, and how their account of emotion was the direct inspiration for cognitive behavioural therapy. I've been promising this connection since early in the series, so next time we finally give it the full treatment. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and leave a comment if any of this has been useful. If you want to learn more, take a look at my channel page. There's plenty there to improve your understanding of Stoicism. For now, keep calm, keep stoic, and I'll see you in the next one.